It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. The Marc Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Marc is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Marc Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. Thanks for tuning in on WHP 580 AM and iHeartRadio. And a special welcome to our new listeners and friends tuning in through News Talk 104.1 FM and 1600 AM at WEJS Broadcasting out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We're so proud to be a member of the WEJS team. And welcome to all of their listeners to our show. We are not in studio during the coronavirus. We are calling from a remote location due to the iHeartRadio Studios prevention and mitigation protocols. So that's why the sound might be a little off, but be patient, bear with us. Once we get through this COVID-19 virus epidemic, we'll be back in studio and the sound and the quality will be better. If you'd like to watch prior podcasts of the show or read any of my columns on Penn Live, or to take a look at some great merchandise, including our popular Right to Bear Arms muscle shirt and the We're Glad You're Our Neighbor, Just Please Don't Kill Us yard signs, you can check out our website at marcscaringishow.com. And for more political and legal news throughout the course of the week, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And today we'll be joined by Republican State Representative Don Keefer. Don represents the 92nd District, serving parts of York and Cumberland counties. And I've known Representative Keefer for a long, long time. I'm not going to tell you how long because that wouldn't be fair to her. That's because when you look at her, she looks like she's about 21. She's a strong conservative who's shaking things up in Harrisburg. She's not pleased, however, that Governor Wolf has shut down hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvania businesses. Well, that's hurting businesses and workers in her district and across Pennsylvania. We'll hear more from Representative Keefer about what she's doing to try to reopen Pennsylvania businesses and put workers back to work later in the show at the bottom of the hour. Now, we've been talking for the past several weeks about the coronavirus, or Coronageddon, as we call it here on the Marc Scaringi Show. Today, Pennsylvania Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levin, just finished her daily presser about 30 minutes or an hour ago. She announced Pennsylvania now has reached 10,000 cases of COVID-19. In total, 136 Pennsylvanians have died after testing positive for the virus. Dr. Levin today urged Pennsylvanians to continue to practice social distancing and to follow the state's new guidance to wear masks when they go out. We'll talk a little bit more about masks later in the show. The state is trying to limit a surge in cases that could overwhelm hospitals, the Secretary of Health said, and in a lot of ways, it's up to you, she says. Of the 10,017 Pennsylvanians who've tested positive for the virus, 1,004 have been hospitalized, Levin said, with 276 requiring intensive care and 170 requiring ventilators. So that's today's update from our Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levin. Now, the coronavirus, in conjunction with Governor Tom Wolf's business closure order, which he has now extended indefinitely, and his statewide stay-at-home or stay-in-place order, which is in effect until April 30th, the end of this month, that has knocked down Pennsylvania businesses and workers, and it's knocked them down pretty hard. More than 1 million Pennsylvanians have applied for unemployment benefits since the state's COVID-19 mediation efforts kicked off in mid-March. As of Friday, 1,017,000 101 workers. About 15% of Pennsylvania's labor force are now seeking the state's jobless benefits. That's according to the State Department of Labor and Industry. It's right there on their website. You can take a look. Governor Tom Wolf, as you know, closed all schools for 2 weeks starting March 13th, ordered restaurants to shutter in impacted counties on March 16th, and then asked for all but the most essential businesses to follow suit statewide on March 19th, and then extended the school closure to the end of this school year and extended the business closure order indefinitely, and then imposed the stay-at-home order, which is through the end of this month. The University of Pittsburgh economist recently estimated that the jobs of 2.2 million Pennsylvanians will be impacted by Wolf's life-sustaining business order issued on March 19th. So economists estimating 2.2 million job losses as a result. We're already at 1 million as a result of this governor's business closure order. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But, oh, by the way, Pennsylvania has made national news. I saw this in the USA Today. The Pennsylvania State Police, they've cited 19-year-old Anita Lynn Schaefer for violating the stay-at-home order in York County after going on a leisurely drive. And maybe Representative Don Keefer, being from York County, maybe we'll ask her about this case when she gets on at the bottom of the hour. But this young lady, Anita Lynn Schaefer, she was out on a leisurely drive. She is the only person to have ever been cited under Pennsylvania's Disease Control and Prevention Law of 1955. The state police have determined that a leisurely drive is not essential travel. However, if you take a look at the governor's stay-at-home order, it states you can engage in outdoor activity, such as walking, hiking, or running, if you maintain social distancing. However, apparently, according to the state police, if you engage in outdoor activity that includes leisurely driving, as opposed to walking, hiking, or running, then you are a criminal, and you will be charged with a crime. Now, Ms. Schaefer was alone in her vehicle. And by the way, you don't need social distancing when you're alone in your vehicle like you do when you're walking, hiking, or running. You're enclosed in glass and steel, or probably plastic nowadays with the cars built nowadays. You're not going to spread COVID-19 when you are alone in your car on a leisurely drive. Nevertheless, this young 19-year-old woman cited for a crime. And we'll see what happens to that court case. Of all the court cases in all the Commonwealth, that's the one I would love to have to defend that young lady and challenge the constitutionality of that particular charge. Now, as you know, my law firm, Scaringi Law, has sued the governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf, for his business closure order, ordering hundreds of thousands of businesses that he deems to be non-life sustaining to close their physical operations. And I sued on behalf of a group of clients, including a golf course, a political candidate, timber company, laundromat, and a real estate agent. Now, we claim that the governor does not have the authority under statutory law to issue that order. And the issuance of that order has violated the constitutional rights of my clients and all business owners, by the way, across Pennsylvania by dispossessing them of their property without due process of law, without just compensation. Now, the governor, of course, has fought me on this suit the whole way. We filed our suit under the Supreme Court's King's Bench, an extraordinary jurisdiction authority. Now, under these powers, the court can hear a legal claim on a matter of great public significance without the claim having to go through the trial court and the lower appellate courts. And under extraordinary jurisdiction, the Supreme Court can take over a matter pending in a lower court. And we did have a similar case pending in the Commonwealth Court. Now, surprisingly, the governor did not challenge us on the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. So that means we will likely get a ruling on the merits in this case, which I think is critically important. We're going to talk more about Governor Wolf's business closure order and the Scaringi Law lawsuit. And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. Welcome to my listeners on WHP 580 and our new friends and listeners on News Talk 101.4 FM and 1600 AM in Williamsport, broadcasting out of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. We're so happy to be a part of your station and your lineup now. And we're talking about Coronageddon, the COVID-19 crisis that is confronting the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And the government's response is part of that crisis, is contributing to that crisis. The governor's business closure order has shut down hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvania businesses and now has resulted in the lost jobs of 1 million Pennsylvanians. And we're talking about the Scaringi Law lawsuit against the governor of Pennsylvania, asking the Supreme Court to strike down the governor's business closure order. And we're going to talk in a little bit at the bottom of the hour with Representative Dawn Keefer, state rep from down in York and Cumberland counties. And she's been working hard to get Pennsylvania businesses reopened again and get Pennsylvanians back to work. Now, about the case, it's been an extremely and rapidly evolving case. And typically when you bring a legal case in court, the action or the conduct and the harm that you complain about has already occurred. But in this case, the business closure order, that's what we're complaining about, well, that's continued to change and evolve through the 2-week span that we've been litigating. The governor revised his business closure order twice after announcing it and during our suit. After we had filed the suit, the governor revised his business closure order, in which he transferred the industries of 2 of my clients from the non-life sustaining list, thus they were shut down, to the life sustaining list, thus they were opened back up. And those 2 clients, one was a timber company, the other was a laundromat. And we had argued in our first petition, which, by the way, we filed in the Commonwealth courts, that the timber company is critical to combating COVID-19 because it harvests pulpwood, which later on down the supply chain becomes tissues, toilet paper, and paper towels. And my other client, the laundromat, well, that cleans clothing. And we need to be able to clean and sanitize our clothing because COVID-19 can be transferred via used, dirty clothing. Makes sense. So after we filed the suit, the governor apparently realized the error of his ways and moved those 2 industries, along with others, over to the life-sustaining list so that the companies, my clients, the laundromat and the timber company, could reopen. Then, and the fact that he did that is evidence of the fact that the original decision to shut them down was not reasonable, was not rational. There was no reasonable basis for it. That is evidenced by the fact that within 24 hours, you changed your mind entirely based upon no new facts. The facts hadn't changed. It was just the governor had a, voila, a moment. Oh, that's right. We need paper towels. We need toilet paper. And so he said, oh, that's right. Timber companies, forestry and logging, well, yeah, they cut down the pulpwood, but ultimately becomes tissue, right? So this is prime evidence of the fact that the decisions made by the governor to put some industries in life-sustaining and some in non-life-sustaining was not based upon reason or rationale. It was an arbitrary decision, and we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. In fact, we'll focus on part of our lawsuit challenged the waiver process itself. The governor said, well, if your business is on the non-life sustaining list, just file a waiver, which, by the way, on Thursday, he declared that Friday, yesterday, end of business, was the deadline to file your waiver request. So if you didn't file it, today's Saturday, this is a live radio show, if you haven't filed your waiver request, you're SOL, according to Governor Tom Wolf, and your business will remain shut down, according to the governor, indefinitely until he decides to open it up. How about that? In any event, the arbitrariness and the capriciousness, and yes, those are kind of fancy words, but those are the legal terms that we use in the law when we challenge the constitutionality of a particular government action. We can challenge it on grounds that it's arbitrary, that it's capricious. And think about this: according to media reports, the governor approved a waiver request by the Wolf Company, Wolf Home Products, which is a kitchen cabinet assembly company and is the former family business of the governor. Media reports began to surface that the Wolf Company was open for business because it was granted a waiver by the governor's Department of Community and Economic Development and got a waiver from being on the non-life sustaining list. So kitchen cabinet company, Wolf Home Products, open for business. And as media reports surfaced, the governor reversed himself and rescinded the waiver he had previously granted to his former family business. Now, according to that media report, the governor explained the reason for his about face, and here it is. According to DCED, the Wolf Home Products was originally approved as supporting infrastructure. Upon further review, DCED determined that the lines of business Wolf is engaging in do not meet their criteria, and their exemption will be rescinded. Now, first of all, it's not an exemption; it's called a waiver, and the DCED is stating right there. It's basically an admission, and we've included that in our lawsuit, that the original rationale for putting the Wolf Home Products on the non-life sustaining list, on granting the waiver, was not based upon reason or rationality. Because they changed their mind. The facts didn't change. Wolf Home Products is still making kitchen cabinet assembly. It's still a kitchen cabinet assembly company. The facts haven't changed. It's the minds of the DCED, which is under the control of the governor. Those minds changed, or maybe the governor's mind changed. Why? Perhaps it was changed by the media reports that were coming out embarrassing him because he had granted a waiver to his former family business, which makes, or I don't even think it makes, it assembles kitchen cabinets. Is that life-sustaining? Probably not, although all businesses are essential. But it just shows you the arbitrariness and the capriciousness of the governor's waiver process. There's another example of a candy company. So candy companies apparently are essential. Candy and chocolate specialty companies are apparently essential, or other specialty stores. They were placed on the closure list at first. Then in the first revision, they were placed on the life-sustaining list. So now other specialty stores, such as candy and chocolate retailers, are considered life-sustaining. According to media reports, when Facebook commenters asked one of those candy and chocolate stores, which, by the way, is owned by the family of the president pro temp of the Pennsylvania State Senate, Joe Scarnati, Facebook commenters said, "Hey, why are you guys still open for business? Why aren't you shut down?" The business replied that it's qualified as a specialty food store. Why? Because it sells sauces, pasta, oils, olive oil probably, and biscotti. Now, I am of Italian descent, half Italian, half English, all Pennsylvania, all American. And, I might say a good biscotti, that is life-sustaining. But I say that in jest. Biscotti, although we love it, pasta, a nice olive oil is wonderful, but it's not life-sustaining according to the governor's definition of life-sustaining. Come on, that's not a solid and substantial reason to put a candy store on the life-sustaining list. It's just another example of the arbitrariness and the capriciousness, those are legal terms, of the waiver process. And that's why we're asking the Supreme Court to strike it down. Get rid of the business closure order, which would get rid of the waiver process, because they violate the constitutional rights of Pennsylvania business owners. My law firm, by the way, 6 offices shut down, cannot operate our physical offices because I guess lawyers and legal services are not life sustaining. But you can go into a candy shop and buy some chocolate, or you can go into the President Pro Tem Joe Scarnati's family shop up there in northern Pennsylvania and buy some biscotti, some nice Italian cookies. That shop's open. But my law firm, my client, Kathy Gregory's real estate agency, shut down. My client, Friends of Danny DeVito, political campaign committee, physical operations, shut down. My client, Blueberry Hill Public Golf Course and Lounge, golf course, shut down. So that is the effect. That is an example of the arbitrariness of the waiver process. Now, we're going to talk more about the governor's business closure order, and we're going to hear from State Representative Dawn Keefer of York and Cumberland counties on what she's doing to help Pennsylvania businesses reopen and to help put Pennsylvanians back to work. When we return from this brief commercial break, you're listening to the Mark
Rimmer, acrimmer.com. Let's get back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We're talking about Coronageddon and the effect of Governor Tom Wolf's business closure order on businesses and workers across Pennsylvania. We have hundreds of thousands of businesses shut down, and we now have, according to the Department of Labor and Industry, over 1 million Pennsylvanians out of work and filing for unemployment compensation. We've heard from some industries, car dealers, construction workers, and others who are asking, if not begging the governor for relief from his business closure order so they can get back to work providing essential services and products to the people of Pennsylvania. And we're pleased to have a special guest with us this afternoon, Republican State Representative Dawn Keefer of the 92nd District down there in York and Cumberland counties. Welcome, Representative Keefer.
Good afternoon. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing fine, Dawn. We're so glad to have you on the program. And you've been receiving a lot of constituent calls, a lot of concern expressed by your constituents about businesses being closed down, workers out of work. What has been your response to date?
So my office has been absolutely inundated, Mark. I'm getting at least 100 calls a day. I'm getting emails. I'm getting people trying to come in. My office is closed to the public, but we remain open because just of the foot traffic and the dialogue that we have nonstop. People are calling panicked. And our businesses are absolutely in a state of chaos that has been driven by the governor.
You know, I wanted to make a point, and that is the business closure order, the governor's order, does not affect state representatives or state senators' offices. Isn't that correct?
Right. But the separation of powers, all of his orders do not impact our offices. So
that's at least one place where he's maintained the Constitution. Sorry, that's just in one place.
That's so true, right? Right? Absolutely. The rest of it's, pick and choose.
Now, as a member of our General Assembly, the State House of Representatives, what do you think? What can you do in the House? Is there anything you can do to provide relief to some businesses or all businesses who are affected by the closure order?
Right. So I'm not saying that we don't need to take precaution and we shouldn't be very, very cautious and careful, right? But the way that he went about shutting down the businesses, first of all, he had no plan. He just did a shutdown, right? He announces at 4:30 in the evening to take effect at 8 p.m. that same night. We didn't get any lead time on that either. We got an email about 15 minutes before he made the announcement. Right? So he does that. Everybody starts, crashed our offices, all the businesses. What does this mean? What can I do? What can't I do? They had no clue. But that next Friday, they came up with a waiver process. Again, it was completely arbitrary. There was no system in place, no really method of madness, if you will. What is life-sustaining, what isn't? So what we could do is what is already provided for us. So federally, there's called the CISA guidelines. And these are guidelines that were established that designate what an essential business is. And it goes through a full list. It's provided by the Homeland Security, Office of Homeland Security. And then it also allows for a linkage. So if you are in part of a supply chain, but you're not on the list, but you can articulate your role in that supply chain, you can continue to do business. So all of that is already provided. The wheel has already been invented. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's what we could do, but that's not what we're doing.
You know, you raised some excellent points, and that sounds like a very reasonable, rational piece of legislation to address that particular point. But you also say they had no plan, and they had no system in place. And boy, you couldn't be more right about that. And in our lawsuit, the governor is citing his authority to close all Pennsylvania businesses and to decide which are to be closed and which are to remain open based upon the Emergency Management Services Code, which we're arguing in the lawsuit does not give him the statutory authority to do that. But that code does talk a lot about planning for disasters, the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Services, PEMA. And they have a council. The statute mandates that a council exist. It actually puts the leadership of the House and Senate as members of the council, the lieutenant governor on the council, to plan, to prepare for disasters. The governor claims this is a disaster. Well, where's your plan? Why haven't you been carrying out your statutory duties to have a plan in place? And you, Representative Keefer, correctly point out, well, they had no plan. They had no system in place, and it was just kind of a fly-by-night operation on who's closed, who's open, and who gets a waiver.
Right. We make it up as we go. And depending on who you speak to in the office of DCED, which is Department of Community and Economic Development, that would dictate your answer. So you could ask the same question, get 3 different answers. Oh, and it could change the next day. So it's continuously evolving. When we start to inquire about why they didn't use the CISA list, which was something that was already there, then they said, oh, we did. We used that as our guideline, right? But they didn't. And they use this term life-sustaining and non-life-sustaining, whatever that means. And they pick and choose which pieces of the CISA list that they want to incorporate. So they're not, it's all, an afterthought. Nobody even considered supply chain, like I heard you mentioning that prior to, how the pulp, the wood pulp, and what's part of the supply chain. Those were long conversations we had nonstop. So it's just been archaic. It's been complete chaos, and it is running the gamut as far as the responses. Like, some are really frustrated and angered because I have one general contractor, a perfect example, has contracts with these different nursing homes, and he can't do the work. He doesn't have a waiver, and the nursing home wants him to have a waiver, but he can't get one. His competitor gets one, and they hire the competitor. Same type of company. How is that fair? They're literally stealing businesses from each other. And in getting back to that, if we incorporated this CISA list, right, and we said, here you go, here's the protocol, it's already spelled out. Now we can use you in DCD to go do more pressing issues of the state, right? We could put this in place. This allows the part of our economy, the segment, that could continue to operate with the least amount of risk to do so. So we are not completely anemic when we get through this. That we have some kind of foundation that we can build upon to get our economy up and going.
Very well said, very reasonable, rational points. We're talking to State Representative Dawn Keefer of the 92nd State Legislative District in York and Cumberland counties, and she's talking about legislation that she's put in the State House to require the governor to follow these CISA or CISA guidelines, and we're talking about the cybersecurity infrastructure. Let me see, the cybersecurity infrastructure. I think it's security agency of the Department of Homeland Security. And she raises, and Representative, you raise a very good point, and we highlighted this in our lawsuit. And what you're saying to the governor is do what you say you were going to do. The governor said in reviewing these waivers, he was going to maintain consistency with CISA guidelines. And CISA has come out with guidelines, for example, saying that all real estate services are essential and should be open. Yet Governor Wolf, on his original business closure order, put real estate services as non-life sustaining, which is his way of saying non-essential, and closed them, and has kept them closed despite 2 revisions to his business closure order. But he is in direct contradiction with his own statement on the DCED waiver website, which states he's maintaining consistency with CISA, which says we need real estate. People need homes. Housing is essential. Food, water, shelter, the 3 essential criteria, the 3 essential things we all need to sustain life. So what I'm saying in my lawsuit is what you're saying in your proposed law, which is do what you say you are going to do and follow these guidelines so we have some rationality so businesses know who's on, who's not.
Right, and it's equitable, right? So it's fair for everybody. The rules are the same. We're not picking winners and losers. And then it's also easily navigated, right? They could go on to this list, they find the industry section, they see what's required. Oh, I'm not there. However, and then it goes through the supply chain. So it's all spelled out. We don't have to reinvent this wheel.
Right, and you raise another point. And first of all, when you came on, you announced that your offices are open and that, of course, you are putting into place, or you have put into place and are maintaining COVID-19 prevention and mitigation protocol to make sure your offices are safe. But I'm glad to hear that your offices are open, that your caseworkers are working, and that you're helping the constituents in your district. I mean, I couldn't think of a time in recent history where you have more people confused and concerned and worried that their jobs are gone, their businesses are shut down, and you're there helping. You're open and you're helping your constituents. What do your constituents, or what do Pennsylvanians, what do they need to know? Where can they get help dealing with unemployment compensation, dealing with this business closure order?
And that's what they're calling for, because they've been calling the governor's numbers. They're not getting answers. The systems are crashing. They have nowhere to turn. They can't get their questions answered. So we have tried to remain a continual resource. Even on the weekends, my staff are calling in, taking messages down and relaying them so we can get back to people, because they are completely panicked. They're very desperate. From unemployment comp, which is just really crushed this week, to small businesses saying, all the different loan programs and SBA grants, loans, all that programming that's in place, the new payroll protection act. So it's trying to get all that information, seeing what they apply for, seeing what kind of help or aid that's out there. It's really difficult to navigate by themselves. And then, as the systems are crashing, because we have over 1 million unemployment compensation claims that have been filed just in Pennsylvania. Over 1 million. That is just not sustainable. It is completely chaotic. And so for the governor's office not to have offices that are able to handle this or being able to respond to constituents is terrible, just terrible. So we've tried to remain that resource. There's no way that we could ever close it at this juncture. This is what we're supposed to be here to do, right? Represent the people. They need to be heard.
Absolutely. And State Representative Dawn Keefer, I'm going to have to let you go. We're running up against a commercial break, but I want to thank you so much for calling in, for lending your wisdom, and for helping and for fighting to reopen Pennsylvania businesses, put Pennsylvanians back to work with COVID-19 protocol protections in place. Dawn, thank you very much. We're going to take a very brief commercial break. Stay tuned. We'll be back. We're right up.
Now back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We're talking about coronavirus and Coronageddon and what the Governor Wolf's self-created disaster for the people of Pennsylvania by closing hundreds of thousands of businesses, resulting in the lost jobs and unemployment compensation claims of over 1 million Pennsylvanians. And we're pleased to have been able to speak with State Representative Dawn Keefer from the 92nd District in York and Cumberland counties. And she's already working very hard in the General Assembly. She's got a bill drafted. And she was talking about how she wants how it's obvious the governor did not have a plan. There was no plan in place once he issued this disaster declaration and this business closure order. There really was no plan in place as to which businesses were going to be closed down and why, and those businesses that were to remain open, what type of precautions would they have to put in place to remain open. There was no plan. And the governor on his DCED, the Department of Community and Economic Development website, is saying that when he reviews these waivers, which, by the way, the deadline to file for a waiver, according to the governor, it's over. So if you're a business that hasn't applied for a waiver, Governor Wolf is saying you're SOL. You've got to stay closed indefinitely until he says you can open. How about that for due process? How about that for a deprivation of constitutional rights to property? I have 6 offices. My law firm has 6 offices. I'm not even allowed to be physically present, step foot in one of my 6 law offices if it's not for one of these severely restrictive reasons. So that's what we're dealing with in Pennsylvania today. And Representative Keefer is saying, look, Governor, you say that you are maintaining consistency with the CISA guidelines on what businesses are essential and what businesses are not essential. And when Representative Keefer is talking about CISA guidelines, she's referring to the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Yes, I know it's a government, all kinds of acronyms and abbreviations, and they use security twice in the same word to describe an agency, but that's the way our government functions. But she raises a good point, and she's saying this agency has been studying this issue, and they have come up with these advisory guidelines. And the governor himself has stated in his waiver process that he's going to follow them. Well, has he? Apparently, he has not. And we give the example of the real estate industry, and that the real estate industry on the CISA guidelines is deemed to be essential. But why won't the governor grant blanket waivers to all real estate industry services? Or why won't he just revise his order and just move real estate from non-life sustaining to life sustaining the way he's done for other industries? But he hasn't done that. That's one of the reasons why we at Scaringi Law took him to court to see if we can get the Supreme Court to order him to do so. We have other industries that are significantly harmed by this business closure order. The construction industry, huge industry in Pennsylvania. Automotive dealers, the automotive dealer industry, a very big industry in Pennsylvania. They've been begging for relief from the governor for his business closure order. But they haven't gotten it. The John Rickards, the president of Bobby Rahal Automotive Group in Harrisburg, he said he has no doubt dealers could function under modified rules to limit contact with customers. And he submitted waiver requests for his dealerships to the governor's non-life sustaining business closure order for his Honda dealership, his Toyota dealership, his Acura, and his Lexus dealerships. And so far, the only response he received from all of those waiver applications was for the Honda dealership on the Carlisle Pike in Silver Spring Township, and it was rejected. And what he's talking about, and what State Representative Dawn Keefer was talking about, was that businesses can put into effect COVID-19 prevention and mitigation protocol within their own business operations. I mean, we're not children. We're all adults. We don't want to contract this illness. We don't want our clients or customers or vendors or suppliers to contract this illness. Prior to the governor's business closure order, at my law firm, we put into effect these various prevention and mitigation protocol in our offices, cleaning and disinfecting the conference rooms on a regular basis and before and after each client consult, not having any in-person meetings unless there was social distancing put into place, not having in-person consults, instead doing the consults via telephone. We're adults. We're fully functioning human beings who don't want to contract a virus that the governor says is deadly and is going to kill us. So, yes, we do put into effect protections from contracting that illness. We don't want our clients to get it, our vendors or our suppliers. And Bobby Rahal is saying we can do the same thing. Contractors are saying we can do the same thing. Realtors. And by the way, realtors, I want to thank the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors for joining my lawsuit on the last day, that is, by filing an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, in which they supported the legal positions that I was taking with regard to real estate services. And we've talked about how really the governor's in a corner on that one. I don't know how the court can let him out of that one. The governor has said, I'll maintain consistency with SISA guidelines when I review these waivers, and when I consider what businesses are life-sustaining and not life-sustaining. SISA says real estate is life-sustaining, so I think the governor is toast on that one. We'll see what the court says. But PA Association of Realtors, they're saying, look, real estate agents can put into effect these various prevention and mitigation protocol in the manner in which they do their business. We all can, and we all will. We don't need the governor to make these decisions for us and to make the negative decision, which is you're closed down. That's what this governor has done, completely beyond his statutory authority and in deprivation of our constitutional rights. We have the right to the control over the use of, the accessibility to our private property. And businesses and their operations are the private property of the owners. And yes, the government does have police power. We're not arguing that the government does not have police power to regulate the public morals and health. We're not arguing it doesn't have the police power. But it doesn't have this police power. Its police power does not extend to the point where the governor can order the closure of hundreds of thousands of businesses in which there is no reason to believe there is any infected person. And that's one of the points of the lawsuit, that the governor is just indiscriminately, without any reason to believe that any of these businesses has workers who are infected with COVID-19. He's just ordering them to be closed nonetheless. And a golf course, for example, that can put into place mitigation protocols such as you have to walk, no carts. When you walk, you have to maintain 6 feet or 10 feet or whatever the rule is, distance between you and others. Or if you get a cart, it's one golfer per cart or per cart. And the carts are to be cleaned and sanitized before and after each use. No dine-in at the Clubhouse restaurant, only takeout. There are all, you got to wear gloves on both hands. I mean, there are all different types of things that golf courses, just for example, because that's one of my main petitioners in this case, can do to prevent the spread of COVID-19. But they're not allowed because of this blanket, indiscriminate, en masse business closure order. The state of New York has a stay-at-home order in effect for the state. The state of Ohio has a stay-at-home order in effect for the state. Yet golf courses in New York and Ohio are open. They're permitted to be open, provided they put these particular guidelines in effect. Well, my client, Blueberry Hill Public Golf Course and Lounge in Warren County, sits 2 miles from the border with New York State. It's closed by order of Governor Wolf. So golfers in that area, they drive 2 miles across the border to New York, and they can golf. And they can golf in a way that is safe, because those golf courses have put into effect these COVID-19 prevention techniques. but not so. We're not allowed in Pennsylvania. We have to be shut down. That doesn't make any sense. The automobile dealers have a legitimate gripe. The automobile dealers in northeastern Pennsylvania, very close to the New Jersey border, but auto dealers are open in New Jersey. So people who need cars in northeastern Pennsylvania, well, they just drive to New Jersey and buy the car. There's example after example of how irrational and unreasonable the business closure order of Governor Wolf's is. And let's hope that the Supreme Court agrees with our position and strikes it down. And that would restore the businesses, put people back to work. And that's what Pennsylvania is all about. That's what freedom is all about. That's all the time we have today. Also, by the way, for the Marc Scaringi Show, I want to thank